What's going on, everybody? This is Bridging the Geekdoms. If you're new here, our show is pretty simple. We love to talk about pop culture, movies, television, music, and a lot more as well. Over the past couple weeks, you may have seen some videos coming out. We were at Three Rivers Comic Convention. It was amazing. So make sure you check out some of those interviews. We've got some more popping up next week as well. But this episode is the interesting episode, and I'm really hoping that we actually get some involvement from the fans with this one here, because this episode is all about Restore the SnyderVerse and why. I want people to come and tell me, and not just me, but tell the naysayers, those who don't support the Restore the SnyderVerse movement, because I am somebody, I want to see the SnyderVerse restored. But this episode is about telling everybody why the Restore the SnyderVerse movement is still relevant and why it should continue. I'm on another side of this. Again, I'm not against the SnyderVerse, but I'm curious as to what the real reason is to continue. All that and a little bit more on today's episode. Well, hello. Wow, it's been a minute. It has been a minute. I am glad to be back. The past couple weeks have been pretty busy. Comic conventions and life and work. Things are changing at work for me. So yeah, things have been busy, but I'm back. We're back. Hoping that I can get some people on here, because I want to discuss Restore the SnyderVerse. I want to know what is so important about continuing the movement, because when you sit back and take a look at what the fandom has become, it's not a fandom that deserves anything. Not a damn thing. So why should Warner Brothers, why should James Gunn, why should DC Studios listen and even hear what the fans are saying when it comes to Restore the SnyderVerse? That's truly what I want to know. I want to see. Oh boy. I mean, it's tough. I know it's tough. People want what they want, and things are changing. People don't like change, and I get that, and I understand that sometimes change isn't great, but what is it? Before we get into all of that, though, I do want to talk about some things that happened this past week. One of the big things that actually came about this past week was James Gunn was on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast called Inside of You. It's a fantastic podcast. I've been listening to it for a number of years now, and I believe James Gunn was actually on back in, 2018, 2017, when all of that went down with him being called out about his tweets and everything. So this is a great, and James and Michael are friends. So it was a great interview, and I'm hoping that, I think I got everything here. It should be able to be heard. I want everybody to hear this. If I could just turn it up. Hopefully you do.
Luther, promise me this.
Because
he'll be
Michael Rosenbaum.
He'll have gravitas, or he'll be Lex Luthor. He won't be playing Lex Luthor, but he's more acting like this character.
Yeah, so
or this or goofy, or crazy. He's gonna be something that's grounded and real. I know you. I'm sure that's
everything's grounded and real. Yeah, everything's
right.
Grounded and real.
Because I'm not saying anybody's done that. I'm just saying that
maybe somebody's.
Okay, so Michael Rosenbaum, who played, in my opinion, the best live action version of Lex Luthor, in the Smallville series in the 2000s, 2001 to 2000. I think he was in there 7 seasons, so 2008-ish. He played Lex Luthor. But here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing about it. Obviously he's friends with James Gunn, and would Michael Rosenbaum love to be part of the new DCU? Absolutely. But the one thing that he has, because he does have a special place in his heart for Lex Luthor, is that he wants the character to be played a certain way. He wants the character to play and be played with some gravitas, something that we haven't seen. If you take a look back at all of the iterations of Lex Luthor, we've never really had one that was really all about gravitas. And Rosenbaum's version was probably the closest to that on Smallville. And if it had more adult writing, if it wasn't on a CW type of television channel, absolutely, we would have seen that come to fruition. But the SnyderVerse fans lost their shit. And here's the thing. It seems like anytime there is any criticizing of DC, people automatically in the SnyderVerse fandom believe it's about them, it's about what they love, it's about their movies that they love. Automatically. And here's the thing. Both Michael and James Gunn are sitting there. And Michael absolutely has an idea of someone in his head who he's thinking about when saying this. And he goes, get somebody who, is not crazy. He goes a little flamboyant himself there, a little big with that remark. But let's stop for a second and take a look. Take a look at the past iterations of Lex Luthor. You had Gene Hackman, who was the first Lex Luthor in the films with the Christopher Reeve movies. And here's the thing. He was a little over the top. He wasn't your conventional Lex Luthor that we've grown to know in the comics and in cartoons. No, this was a little more over the top. So there's that one. Yeah, we've had a couple other television ones from the Adventures of Lois and Clark, who was a little more of a businessman. You had Michael Rosenbaum, you had John Cryer in Supergirl, we got Michael Cudlitz coming into Superman and Lois. There's other iterations as well as animation. But here's the thing. The next one that we take a look at, film-wise, is Jesse Eisenberg. And Jesse Eisenberg was written and portrayed to be crazy. That is literally how he was portrayed and how he was written. Yes, absolutely. He had a little bit of intelligence, or, some intelligence that came through, but there was a little bit of craziness. There was something wrong with him. He was unstable, quite possibly due to his past, but he was unstable. He had a bit of craziness in him. Heck, we could take a look at the Kevin Spacey version, which is technically supposed to be the Gene Hackman version, and he was over the top as well. Like, I don't understand why people are coming at Michael Rosenbaum here. Or for that matter, James Gunn. Because let's not forget that Michael Rosenbaum is the one who said all of this. He wants to see a Lex Luthor with gravitas. He wants it more grounded and real. And James Gunn goes, yes, it's going to be grounded and more real. And then you have Michael goes, well, maybe, nobody played it like that. And James Gunn goes, yeah, there has been. Because there has been. That is not an incorrect statement. That is not a demeaning statement. That's not a statement to make to bash an actor, to bash an actor's vision, a director's vision. It's fact. That is how 3 film versions of Lex Luthor were portrayed. 3. They were portrayed to be a little crazy, a little over the top. Yet here we sit, people are upset because of that. It's maddening to me. You want to know why the Restore the SnyderVerse campaign isn't going to go anywhere. You want to know why? It's for comments like this from Robert Carlin. It's that type of mindset that the Snyder fandom, the SnyderVerse is always the victim. Regardless if they were talking about Jesse Eisenberg or not, which James Gunn has come out and said, no, I was talking about Gene Hackman. And Gene Hackman, he has in the past commented on how he was not a fan of the way Hackman portrayed Luthor. So that's James Gunn. We don't know who Michael was talking about. Could he have been talking about Jesse, Hackman, Spacey, John Cryer? Who knows? He could have been talking about the actor from the Superboy TV show in the 90s. We don't know who he was talking about. But regardless of who he was talking about, if we take a look at the big three that I mentioned, if you take a look at the big three that I mentioned about Lex Luthor, Hackman, Spacey, Eisenberg, all three of them were crazy just a little bit. So nothing that was said there is demeaning, wrong, anything. People want to find reasons to bitch at James Gunn for anything. And it's not even that many people. It's the Snyder fandom. Hunter Iggy, what is your thoughts on people review bombing the Flash movie? We're going to talk about the Flash movie here in a second, Hunter. So give me a second here. And Triton K175 stopped by. I don't know if he's still watching or not, but he stops by and he says, restore the SnyderVerse. Look, more power to you. If you want the SnyderVerse restored, look, that's great. That is absolutely great. If that's what you want. But again, why? Why should we sit here? And why should we support you? Why should we support that movement? Why is it a movement that is important at this stage? That's what I'm asking, Triton. That's what I'm asking. So please inform me. In the comments here, there is a link. You can jump on my stream here. We can talk man to man and talk about this. I'm all for it. I am all for it. Oh, man. I mean, it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy what has been going on in regards to the SnyderVerse fandom. Now, Hunter brought up the Flash movie. And I am going to bring up Rotten Tomatoes. And let's see if I can get this pulled up here, because this is where people want to go and discuss the Flash, I guess. So Flash movie comes out really today. Today, I think, is the first big open. A lot of people are watching it today. And then tomorrow is the official start of the Flash movie's run. So here we are. The Flash. The tomato meter from the critics, 211 reviews, is at a 68%. After 100 plus verified ratings from the audience for The Flash, it has an 88%, which is about where I expected it to be. I'm going to see it this Saturday. I have yet to see it. I plan to go see it on Saturday. But that is what I expect. I expect this movie is going to sit somewhere between 80 and 90 in the audience score percentage. So if there is truly some sort of review bombing going on, they're not doing a good job. They're not. I mean, 88% is a very respectable score. When it comes to critics, you always see that, almost always, especially with comic book movies, you see that differential. You always see critics are either up or down, 20 to 40% of what is the audience score. So I honestly don't think that's all that big of a deal. And I don't trust the critic scores. I never go on Rotten Tomatoes and see what the critics are saying, because very rarely do I ever even agree with the critics. The critics that I care about, I watch on YouTube. The critics that I care what they have to say, I watch on YouTube or I listen to their podcasts. And that's what I do. I listen to them. I don't look at a metric score. But let's take a look at some of these ratings or some of these verified audience scores. And then we also have the all audience, which are not verified. And you take a look at some of these, and a lot of them are still high. Like, I don't see the review bombing. I mean, Hunter, I know you're the one who brought it up here. What are your thoughts on people review bombing The Flash? I'm not seeing it. Now, are you talking about on Twitter? That's something else. And I'm not even going to pull up Twitter and start showing that stuff because the amount of spoilers that people are putting on Twitter right now is absolutely asinine. It is ridiculous. It is not right. It goes against everything the SnyderVerse fandom fought for. Do people not understand that? I'm calling you all out. The Snyder fandom, I want you here. I want you to come here. I want you to realize, like, hey, why is it, why are you acting this way? That's what I want to know. Let's look at some of these. This is from the all audience, so not the verified audience. We got Deontay tried to cram too much in a short period, and I did not like the portrayal of Barry Allen. Now, that's a verified one, though. So let's find a non-verified. Kenzo. Honestly, I'm giving this 2 stars, but wish I could give it 2.5. Saw this at a screening last night. Pros, great to see Keaton's Batman on screen again, and he really chews up scenery. A fun adaptation of the basic principles of Flashpoint Paradox comic story. Some surprisingly heartfelt moments with strong moral implications. Cons of CGI is awful. For a movie that cost well over $200 million to make, this looks like something that was made on Unreal Engine from 2010. So, yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch more here. We got Samuel L. The film is nothing special. Let's just say we've seen better CGI. The slightly more emotional moments are when Michael Keaton is around. Plot-wise, it flows well, but they could have done so much better from the excitement they had built by promoting the film. It seemed that once in theaters, we would finally see a film that would lift DC. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Hunter asks, where have you been? I mean, are you saying show-wise, Twitter-wise? What are you talking about there? Daniel M. I was shocked how much I love this movie. It had heart. It had a good philosophical story about changing the past. And the cameos, chef's kiss. Mwah. Yeah, all right. Ooh, all right. Triton is back. Let's see. Finishing Snyder's story, literally just Justice League 2 and 3 would end years of bad faith and division in the DC fan base. Simple as honestly, we'd be fine with it as an Elseworld project. All right, Triton, I don't disagree with you there. I don't. I want to see the SnyderVerse continued. I would love to see Zack be able to finish what he began with his story. But here's the kicker, okay? We know, we should know, people should understand how the movie industry works. I completely agree. Man of Steel, in my opinion, is a masterpiece. It is the best comic book movie, in my opinion. There's not one that has surpassed it yet. Batman vs. Superman has its flaws. It's a fun movie. The final 30, 40 minutes of that movie might be my favorite final 30, 40 minutes of any movie ever. Love that film for that reason. Zack Snyder's Justice League is a good movie. Is it anything spectacular and great? No, I think it's a little drawn out. I do have some issues with some of that film, but that's not to say I didn't enjoy the story and what Zack was doing. So yes, I would love to see that. But this is coming from a Snyder fan, somebody who truly loves Snyder's work. And you start to see, okay, if Snyder fans feel that way, if they're really truly honest with themselves and look at these films, and I'm not saying all Snyder fans, Triton, you could be one that loves these films undyingly, and you will support them and defend them until the day you die. And that's great. But here's the thing. The general audience, the larger audience, did not connect with those three movies. The general audience did not connect with those characters. Sure, they like Ben Affleck's Batman. They like him as Batman, but they did not like the direction Zack was taking him. They did not like his menacing take on Batman. Superman. The general audience did not connect with this Superman. Let's not forget that the general audience, they are the ones who are going to make these movies make $1 billion. They are the ones who are going to go back to the theater to see it again, to tell their family, their friends, their mother, their father to go see this movie. They're the ones that movie studios have to rely on. Fans are great. Fans will help push the movie. Fans are great for marketing. The diehard fans who know a bit of the story, the comics, they count on us to help push the movie up, to tell the general audience about going to see it. But once it's in the general audience's grasp to see it, once it's there, that is when you discover whether it's working or not. And that is the big problem. I agree. I want to see Snyder's vision completed, his story completed. Absolutely. And I think Elseworlds project is great for that. But Warner Brothers is a studio. DC now has a studio. They need to make money. We're not going to get into the finances of Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, and we're sure as hell not going to compare them to Marvel or to other films. Right now, in 2023, the superhero genre is on a downswing. Big time. Movies are struggling still in the theaters. Yeah, you're having some gems. You're getting some big hits out there. But people are not going to see these superhero films like they used to. And whether it's because of the quality, which in my opinion is a big issue when it comes to it. I think writers today are much different than writers were 10 years ago. And I think that's a big problem that we're seeing. They're trying to shove in social politics into these films now. Whereas before, yeah, they were in there, but they were kind of in the background and you can kind of connect a little bit if you really tried. But now it's up in front and center, and that's something that people don't like to see. So right now, superhero genre is on the downswing. The general audience was never able to connect to the DCEU, from Man of Steel all the way up to Shazam 2. There was never a consistent connection with the fans and those characters in that story. One of the things why, and one of the reasons why, is because the general audience looks at these characters, whether Snyder is building the universe, whether it was Josh Whedon, whether it was Walter Hamada, Jeff Johns, whoever it was, those characters were from that movie that they saw that they didn't like. And it's hard to pull them back in. Okay? So, Warner Brothers and DC Studios, they need to make money. They need to find a way to do that. And they need to pull in the general audience. They need to pull in a new audience. Rebooting is the way to do that. We're still not 100% sure on how James Gunn is going to do that, but that is the smart business move. 100 out of 100 people that they would have hired for that position would have done that. Triton, the general audience was only against it because it wasn't like the MCU. Instead of trying to appreciate Snyder's work for what it was, they bitched and moaned. MCU bias is real. Again, I don't disagree because I wanted to see something different than the MCU. And something beautiful, and I don't want to get too much into James Gunn and what he's going to be doing with the DCU because it's still early. We still don't know 100% what he's going to do. We can only go off of interviews and things that he's said recently. But over on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast, where the whole Lex Luthor stuff came up, he did talk about the DCU. He talked about the comic book genre, superhero genre as a whole, as well as Marvel. And he explained how it has gotten stale, that it has, they've kind of written themselves and put themselves in a rut to where they can't and haven't been able to find the success that they once had. And he's talked about how he wants to bring that back. He wants to focus on the story. He wants to focus on allowing these writers and directors to give us good movies. So while, yes, the idea of the MCU is still there, but it's more of a, hey, we need to come up with a plan. We need to build a universe like Marvel did with the MCU. It's not James Gunn going in there and taking these characters and cloning and copying Marvel. He is taking the ideas, what has been successful with Marvel, but allowing the artists, allowing the characters to grow and build as they are in the comics on the big screen. So that's exciting to me. But that doesn't mean, like you've said, or like you've been saying, that we couldn't get an Elseworlds for SnyderVerse. I agree, we could at some point. But I like to throw this out there. And this is something that I just like to continue throwing out there. Sure, we want to continue the SnyderVerse, but why not? Why not animate the SnyderVerse? Because here's the beauty of that. Let's say they animate the SnyderVerse. Let's just say they do that. And let's say it's successful. You know what that tells James Gunn? You know what that tells Zack Snyder? You know what that tells Warner Brothers? You know what? Maybe we can explore doing it in live action now. There are ways to go about doing and restoring the SnyderVerse that isn't screaming, boycott Warner Brothers, fire James Gunn, fire David Zaslav. There's ways to go about it. What made the Snyder Cut successful, the Snyder Cut movement successful, was that we were respectable. We did it with dignity, decency. We had a goal. We want the Snyder Cut released. And with that, we pushed artistic integrity. With that, we raised hundreds of millions of dollars, or hundreds of thousands of dollars for AFSP. That is what was amazing about the Snyder Cut movement. But today, the SnyderVerse movement, which is just a continuation of the Snyder Cut movement, is no longer about decency and respect. It's about boycott Warner Brothers, boycott The Flash, fire James Gunn. Do you understand why now? Why this is not the way to go about doing this? Hunter Icky, BridgingTheGeekdoms, what if he's not make return of the money they spent? If you're talking about James Gunn, if he doesn't make the money that they spent for the DCU, again, yes, that's something that could happen. That the DCU could fail, but the MCU could have failed. The DCEU, did fail. Avatar could have failed. The ifs and whats and buts right now don't really matter until we start to see what comes. There's always a chance to course correct. There's always a chance to reboot again. And one of the things I've always said is, if The Flash, let's take The Flash, for instance. If The Flash fails, if The Flash makes only $300 million in theaters, which would be a catastrophe and ginormous failure for that movie. If it only made $300 million, that won't change a damn thing that's going forward with DC now. James Gunn will still make his Superman film. He will continue making his 10-year plan. And that's important to realize. So boycotting, not going to see The Flash. If you don't want to see The Flash, don't go see The Flash. But boycotting it, telling your friends and family that might be interested to go see it, to don't see it because of the SnyderVerse, that makes no sense, because the success or failure of the Flash doesn't necessarily affect the restoration of the SnyderVerse, or I should say, what James Gunn is doing, because I think it could affect the SnyderVerse in a little way, and I'll get to that in a moment. Triton again. You're great, man, by the way, Triton. Thanks for being here talking. If it wasn't obvious, I ain't supporting Gunn. Understandably, I can see that. Literally everything that made me a DC fan either ended or was murdered by WB. Also, I know that a lot of Snyder fans would be fine with animation, and you're absolutely right. More Snyder fans would be fine with the animation side of things, 100%. And that's something that I have been pushing. I'm pushing to Stop utilizing the Restore the Snyderverse hashtag, because that is too broad of a statement. It's too, because you have so many Snyder fans who sit there and say, what does that mean? It means Ben Affleck's movie. It means Deathstroke. It means Joker and Harley Quinn. It means Justice League 2, 3. It means this. It means that. It means a Henry Cavill Superman sequel. To some of the fans, it means that. People, there's no direction for that hashtag and that campaign. Not to mention the negativity that surrounds it. Because over the last 2 years, people have, in the name of Restore the Snyderverse, in the name of Zack Snyder, they have been complete assholes and toxic when it comes to it. I get you're not supporting James Gunn. That's your right. I have no problem. That is, you can support whomever you want to. But here's the thing. You still have to be respectful. To call for James Gunn to be fired, there's no reason for it. You see, James Gunn didn't fire Zack Snyder. James Gunn didn't put an end to the Snyderverse. David Zaslav did not put an end to the Snyderverse. That all happened in 2017. That happened with Kevin Tushihara, Jeff Johns, Josh Whedon, and whoever else was around at that time. 2017. Before Justice League even came out, the Snyderverse was dead. Since then, we've had 2 regimes in charge of Warner Brothers. The second regime, with Walter Hamada and Jason Kilar and all those others, they gave us, even if it was a little bit reluctant, they gave us Zack Snyder's Justice League. I understand the people that don't like Walter Hamada because of the Ray Fisher stuff. And personally, I think that got a little out of hand. But that's neither here nor there. So people have taken that aspect, that idea. And it was that moment, Ray Fisher, he was the catalyst for all the toxicity within the fandom. That's not to say that his demand for respect, accountability was not important, because that was important. But the way the fans rallied behind him was not the best way to rally behind him, because they became toxic. They were fueled by hatred and anger. And that just bled into David Zaslav taking over Warner Brothers with Warner Brothers Discovery. There was a point in time where there was a little bit of hope. There was some time when people were excited about, oh, David Zaslav could bring back the Snyderverse. But that all ended when Black Adam failed. That all ended when the fans didn't show up. And that's important to realize. Hunter, don't forget that Sil Abdul and Mikey Sutton and Skywalker the Jedi are weaponizing the Snyderverse to turn them into Snyder cult. 100%, Hunter. And that's another thing that people fail to realize. And thankfully, I realized it at a certain point in time. I came to realize that, look, I can't justifiably continue in this fandom and listen to people like Sil Abdul and Mikey Sutton. Because regardless of what is happening, they always twist what is happening to make it seem like the Snyderverse is coming back. It was all for clout. I know people hate that word clout, but take a look at Sil Abdul pre-Snyder Cut. He had no channel. He had no following. He was a writer for the Culture Nerd. He did some things here and there. But then, when he started talking about the Snyderverse and getting these quote-unquote scoops, he started to blow up on YouTube. And people started to follow him and listen to him and think what he was saying is true. And it got people excited, and people were like, oh, the SnyderVerse is going to be restored. You hear that? Sil Abdul, Mikey Sutton. They're all saying it. The scoopers, the grifters, they're saying it. It has to happen. It's true. Here we are. There's no SnyderVerse restored. Everything they said was a lie. And as Hunter is saying, it weaponized the Snyder fandom. Something I know there are people in the Snyder fandom that are great people, respectable, decent, and don't spread the toxicity. And I feel bad that they get lumped in with all of this. And while the Snyder fandom is a small section of the DC fan base, and then you have even a smaller section within the Snyder fan base who are the toxic ones, but they're loud. They're angry for no reason. They're angry. So why? Why would James Gunn, why would David Zaslav listen and pay attention to the hashtag Restore the Snyderverse when constantly with that hashtag is fire James Gunn, with that hashtag fire David Zaslav, boycott Warner Brothers, boycott The Flash? Because no matter what they do, you're still not going to like them. Triton says, I do my best to be respectful, but when Gunn fans are sexist, racist against me, take the piss out of my social anxiety, and seen a bunch of them make jokes about Snyder's daughter, it's really hard. And I agree. That's not to say that there aren't assholes on the other side. There are. But one of the great things about the Snyder Cut movement, something that I love to wave around with pride, is how respectable we were as a fandom. We showed that we were better than Jeff Johns, Walter Hamada, Kevin Tushihara, whoever is in that mix. We showed that we were better. We didn't have to stoop down to the levels of name calling, of spreading hatred and anger towards anybody. Yeah, sure, you had the fuck Jeff Johns, you had the fuck Whedon stuff, but in a way, they deserved it because of you take a look at what happened. And the great thing about it was we still stayed respectable towards the studio at the time. We were saying fuck Jeff Johns, fuck Joss Whedon, after they were gone from the studio, after everything came out about them and they were just either let go from the studio or kind of hidden down in the basement like Jeff Johns was. We stayed respectable. We showed that we were better than the DC fans who didn't want the Snyder Cut, the DC fans who sat there and said there was no Snyder Cut. We were showing that we were better than them. Not because we knew the Snyder Cut was coming or we believed that it was there, but because we took the high ground 99% of the time. You don't get that with the Restore the Snyderverse. Triton says, also to me, Restore the Snyderverse is finishing Snyder's 5-film story. I also support release Ayer Cut and Batfleck's solo film would be nice bonus, but that's it. I want closure. Literally every Snyder fan I've met are fucking cool people, chill and passionate and friendly and welcoming. Like I said earlier, I've seen none of that from Gunn fans. And yes, there's a lot. There are a lot. But let me pull something up here because I hate to be this guy because I don't want to be this guy, but I kind of have to here because you bring up something that isn't 100% accurate. Zach's cameo from Bad Shakalaka from Twitter. Zach's cameo in Justice League is better than all cameos in Flush combined. Boycott Warner Brothers, restore the Snyderverse. Super Saiyan Brule, Henry Cavill, boycott WB, fire James Gunn and Peter Safran, sell Snyderverse to Netflix. Is it true that Batfleck was taken out of the Flash movie credits? Brace yourself, WBD, because someone is going to sue your ass big time. Boycott WBD, boycott WB, fire James Gunn. Angry face. Boycott Warner Brothers in DC. Boycott the Flash movie. Boycott the Flash. Boycott the Flash. Boycott WD. You see this. These are your Snyderverse fans you're talking about, Triton. And you see these memes, these pictures of a dog shitting in a man's mouth where it says the man is real DC fans and the dog is Warner Brothers and boycott Warner Brothers. You know, you see this. These are the fans I'm talking about, Triton. These are the fans that will sit there and act all high and mighty and act like they are better than Warner Brothers, better than those who support James Gunn. Yet they continuously push to boycott a studio, boycott a movie. Mind you, yes, there's a lot of problems that happen with The Flash. I get it. The Ezra Miller stuff, the fact that Ray Fisher was never officially hired to be in the Flash movie, so on and so forth. I get all of that. People are upset about that. But to sit there and say boycott The Flash goes against the artistic integrity that the SnyderVerse fandom pushed so hard for Zack Snyder. We wanted respect for Zack. We wanted him to have his artistic integrity, to show the Snyder Cut, to show what he made. Andy Muschietti, Ezra Miller, Barbara Muschietti, and everybody else that worked on The Flash, why do they not deserve the same respect and artistic integrity? You see where I'm going here? It's hypocritical of the fandom. It's hypocritical of the SnyderVerse fans to fight so hard for respect and artistic integrity to turn around and say, oh, not for them though. Because, well, I don't like that they're not continuing what I want. How is that better than Jeff Johns and Josh Whedon and Kevin Tushihara? Can you explain to me how that is different and how it is better? Because nobody has been able to do that because it's not. That is part of the big issue, part of the big problem that I have with the Restore the SnyderVerse movement. Hunter Iggy, what is your thoughts on Aaron Fisher on his YouTube channel? I have no idea who that is, Hunter. No idea. So I couldn't tell you. I couldn't give you thoughts. He's a guy with 2 A's in his first name, which is interesting. There you go. I don't want to come off as sounding negative or sounding like I'm coming at the SnyderVerse, because I'm not. That's not my intention. I just want to find the respect. I want to see the respect, the integrity, the decency that there was during the Snyder Cut movement. I went ahead and see if I can find it real quick here. I probably shouldn't have. See if I can find it. There it is. So this here, I decided to create and officially launch the Animate the SnyderVerse movement. And it's really important to me that this is understood from a certain point of view, because Animate the SnyderVerse, the ideals of the movement are not to trash Warner Brothers, DC, or the executives there. It's to get back to artistic integrity, respect, honor, decency, as we ask James Gunn and DC Studios to animate the SnyderVerse. And what does that mean? That means whatever the hell they want it to mean. Because it's simple. Animation is cheap. Not as cheap as, it's not like $20, but it is far cheaper to animate than make a whole live action film or 2 or 3. They could probably make 3, 4, 5 animated films for the price of one movie. And that's important here. One thing that people say, and they try to push back, well, you're not going to get the same feel. You're not going to get the same feel. You're not going to get the same visuals that you would in live action. Well, that's just inaccurate. That's not true at all. Because here's the thing. when it comes to animation, we saw what Jay Oliva can do when it comes to animation for the SnyderVerse. I don't have the post up anymore, do I? If you go watch, there's a Teen Titans episode, and it's Jay Oliva directed. Zack Snyder was on it. Here's a picture of when he would they did the Teen Titans, of Zack Snyder, but then they had a little cutaway scene of what a SnyderVerse animated film or series could look like, and it's badass. It's badass. It could be fun. They could go the anime route. They can go with the animation that they had for the DC AU, which was the DC animated universe that was running for a number of years. They could go in so many different ways, and it would work. But here's the big thing. The Animate the Snyderverse hashtag, the movement, the campaign is not trashing anything. It's being respectful. If you don't want to see The Flash, you don't need to talk about it. You don't need to see it. If you don't want to see or go see or talk about Blue Beetle, don't talk about it. Aquaman 2, who cares? That's not what this movement is about. This movement is specifically just showing our respect and how excited we would be if we got to see the completion of Zack Snyder's universe in animation. Triton says, we've seen what Snyder can do with animation in his Owl film. Can't remember the name. Yeah, it's a weird name. The thing still looks insanely gorgeous. Exactly. You could go that route. I think that was a lot of computer generated. I don't remember. It's been a while since I saw it when it came out in 2010. I haven't seen it since then. But here's the thing. When you take a look at someone like Jay Oliva, and here's the cool thing. Here's the cool thing about Jay Oliva. He and Zach are very close friends. Jay Oliva's worked on many, many animated films and projects for DC. Jay Oliva helped draw storyboards back in 2014, 2015, 2016. Along with, I can't remember his name, Jim Lee. He also helped. Imagine those three come together and they decide, we're going to make 3 movies, 4 movies, 5 animated movies, what have you. Zach directs this one. Jay Oliva directs this one. Whatever. Jim Lee is, assistant. He helps in some form or fashion. Maybe, maybe not, whatever. But Jay Oliva and Zack Snyder could double team this, and it could be amazing. And that's something that people don't understand. There's another thing I want to point out. Triton says, and I saw the Teen Titans Go clip. It goes hard. Something I want to point out. When we were asking for the Snyder Cut, did we believe? Was there any moment during that movement, that campaign, where we thought that Zach would be given the privilege to not just release the movie, but also film additional footage? No. We would have been fine with the Snyder Cut coming out as it was sitting on this shelf with incomplete CGI, with whatever it was. We would have been okay with that. But at the time, Warner Brothers went above and beyond. Zack Snyder went above and beyond. Us asking for animate the Snyderverse, they could give us more than just simply 1 or 2 films because of the cost. Ben Affleck's not getting any younger. Jason Momoa's not getting any younger. Zack's not getting any younger. But when it comes to voiceover, you throw some money at them. Just enough money. They come in for Ben Affleck. Could be 5 days work, 10 days work, get a nice hefty paycheck, and he goes about his business. As opposed to 3 months, 6 months, having to get fit, getting in and out of suits. You want to think about that as well. Sure, we would love live action again, which I think if it goes well, that's a possibility still. Triton says, I should probably say I haven't openly called for any boycotts. I just decided to not go watch the films and put my money and passion into other things. And that's exactly what people should do. That's exactly what people should do, Triton. And I respect that. I give you a lot of credit for coming on here and discussing this with me in this forum, because again, it's one of those things that you try to talk to people on social media and it immediately turns into a fight because they're passionate. They want something. And it's hard for people who are passionate and so dug into something to see flaws, to see the truth of the issues there are within that which they're excited about. It took me a while. I have friends who would sit there and do similar things that I'm doing right now to me, and I would be one of those assholes, like pushing back, like, no, you're ridiculous. No, you're ridiculous. It was one of those things that I finally had to come to the realization myself as I started to realize, and it really started with these scoopers, with the grifters, on how they would act and how they would put out all this information. And that was a big issue for me because I did not want to experience being let down constantly because I believed what these people were saying. That was a big issue for me. And whenever I was able to step back from that, and you start to see how all these fans, how all these grifters are starting to treat Warner Brothers, treating James Gunn, treating DC Studios, you start to realize, I love what Zack Snyder created. And I would love to see the Snyderverse continued, but I can't be part of that group. I can't, and I don't want to be lumped in with those people. So I backed out of it. And I tried to call out those who were toxic, those who were just spewing hatred. And it just started arguments constantly started arguments. And Triton says, I also subscribe. You seem like a chill dude. Thank you. Thank you so much, Triton, for subscribing. And here's the thing. If you go through my videos, you're going to see a bunch of stuff when it comes to the Snyderverse. And if you go back like a year, you're going to see you could see so much about my excitement and love for the Snyderverse. And you'll see there's a progression of me just getting not as excited over time. And then there's a point where it just snaps for me. And I just lose it because I realize what has been happening. And it's not that I don't like the Snyderverse, it's not that I don't want to see it continued. It's that I was betrayed. I was led on by so many people and manipulated in a way to believe certain things. And so many fans have fallen into that and have not come to that realization yet. And that's why the other day I decided, let's animate the Snyderverse. I've been saying animate the Snyderverse for months now. I'm not going to say I coined the term. I don't know if I did. I don't know if somebody else did. I don't care who coined the term. You know why I don't care? Because it's not about that. It's about being respectful and showing with respect and honor and integrity, asking James Gunn and DC Studios to animate the Snyderverse. I don't want to trash Warner Brothers. I don't want to trash DC. I'm not really keen on seeing Aquaman 2. I liked the first one, but I don't really care to see Aquaman 2. Sure, I'll check it out, maybe, but it's not like high on my list. I'm interested to see Blue Beetle. I want to see The Flash. But on the flip side, if you don't see them. But when you ask for the Snyderverse, just hashtag animate the Snyderverse. That's what I say. But yeah, Triton, hopefully you check out some more of my videos. We do this live show. We try to do this live show weekly. Typically, I have one or two co-hosts with me. I have three people who kind of been on the show here and there over time. You might see Colton. Colton is the one who started the show with me back in 2016, 2017. And I've added a couple people, and some people have come on here and there since then. So definitely check out the show. Hopefully you follow me on socials, and hopefully we have better conversations. And maybe one time you can jump on the show and we can have a good conversation without the text, because that can be a little barrier sometimes. And I really, again, I'm open for this discussion as often as anybody wants. I will sit down and talk with anybody about the Snyderverse. I'll tear it apart with you. We could talk about what's great about it, what's terrible about it. Now, the Flash movie. Yeah, I mean, we got some huge things with going on social media. People are just spoiling the crap out of it. It's kind of annoying. It really is. Triton. Only upcoming DC film I'm probably going to see is Joker 2. But if it's a massive letdown that ends up tarnishing the first film's reputation, I'm going to make it known. I was not a big fan of the first Joker movie because to me, it took a character that was shrouded in mystery. And sure, there's different iterations of the evolution of Joker. Sure, we've seen that multiple times. That's fine. But they took that character and they decided to go one way with it. And I didn't like it because you take out the name Gotham for the city and you take out, Bruce Wayne and Thomas Wayne, and it's not a DC movie. They simply added 3 or 4 little pieces to make it a DC film, and that was kind of my problem with it. Not only to mention that I do feel like it did sort of glorify that type of behavior because he ended up being the hero of the movie in a way. So that was kind of, but again, you liked it, I didn't, and it is what it is. Like, I wasn't a big fan of the Batman either. I felt that it was slow, and I fell asleep. I never fall asleep in films in the theater. I fell asleep in the theater watching the Batman. The first movie I ever saw in theaters was 1989's Batman. I've seen every Batman movie in theaters, except for Batman Begins, oddly enough. Every Batman movie I've seen in theaters. I fell asleep during the Batman. It was tough. It was rough. But I don't know. I want to know, are you planning on seeing The Flash? Are you somebody who's excited to see what's coming from the DCU? Are you just sick of the toxicity and the hatred and the anger that flows through the Restore the SnyderVerse fandom? Are you willing to maybe make a jump over to and support the Animate the SnyderVerse side of things? Because I think that is just so more logical and capable of happening, especially from an Elseworld standpoint. Not to mention that, let's just say they want to make it a show as opposed to movies. Well, we know that Warner Brothers and DC are willing to license out their IP and animation because Amazon has that Batman series that they licensed out. So could Netflix, maybe because they have such a good relationship with Zack Snyder, could they maybe license out the animation IP for the SnyderVerse? Maybe. Zack Snyder has stated, he has said, he is up, he is willing. Let me see if I can find it here. He goes, would I be interested in whatever medium or whatever ways these ideas would be made? Of course I would. So he's up for it. It doesn't have to be live action. He's up for animation. I'm sure he's up for graphic novels as well. But he's up for animation. So if we can help in pushing that idea to him even more, he could go to Netflix, the big wigs in Netflix, and say, look, my fans want to see this animated. Could we maybe reach out to DC Studios and see what it might take to license out the IP for doing 3 movies, 2 movies, 1 movie, a series, whatever? That would be a lot cheaper for Netflix to take than spending billions of dollars on licensing the live action IPs. Again, it's the business side. People don't like to think about that because, again, they're so caught up in in what they love and what they want to see. Oh boy, don't get me started on the Batman. This is from Triton. And not just because it should have been Batfleck versus Deathstroke. Also, I have no interest in the Flash or gun stuff, and I'm all for animated SnyderVerse. Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason I was not overly excited about the Batman is because I wanted it to be Affleck for sure. But I was never against the idea. I'm always up for a Batman movie. And Matt Reeves is a good filmmaker. But it just didn't work for me. the aesthetic, the look, the feel. I like when things kind of go up and down. Like you take a look at 1989's Batman, and it's more realistic. It's more of a realistic approach. Then you have Batman Returns, which kind of kept that going. Now, granted, I was like, what was I? I was 4 when I saw Batman 89. I was, what, 6 for Returns. So I wasn't even 10 years old when Forever came out. And I love Batman Forever because it kind of took a turn. It went a different direction. It was larger than life. It was the neon lights and the crazy statues and stuff like that. And you had Batman and Robin, which was terrible. We're not going to get into that. But then time went on, and I grew up a little bit, and I was like, you know what? This Batman Begins is amazing. It's one of my favorite Batman. It might be my favorite Batman movie. Dark Knight Return, or Rises, great films. They were set differently than the past films. Then you get Ben Affleck, which was kind of a mixture of that seriousness and that serious tone of the Dark Knight saga, but also had that more comic book feel of just his abilities and what he was capable of doing with his gadgets and his moves. I liked that. But then Matt Reeves went back and, like, I don't know, he just made it too real. And I think with Batman, you have to keep, you can go and have it a little grounded, but the beauty of Batman is the comic side of Batman. It's not that he is a regular human being without superpowers. That's a great aspect of Batman. But what really makes people love Batman is the comic book side, the comic booky side of the character. So to me, that's why the Batman failed. And I know you don't have any interest, Triton, to see Flash and the gun stuff. I do hope you give it a shot at some point. I really do. I think Superman Legacy is going to be something really special. I do. That's not to say I loved Henry Cavill. Like I said at the beginning of the show, Man of Steel is a masterpiece. It is my favorite superhero movie of all time. But I think Superman Legacy, I think it's going to be something special. I really do. I was a Batman guy before becoming a DC fan. I have over 10,000 hours in Arkham Knight. Also, hot take, I think The Dark Knight is the weakest. Oh, dude, I think we just became best friends. I think we just became best friends because I agree wholeheartedly that The Dark Knight is the weakest of that trilogy. And I get blasted for it all the time. Constantly, people are like, what are you talking about? Just about. No, people are so caught up on Heath Ledger's Joker, which is fantastic. It was a great portrayal. But the movie is not a good movie. And however, I don't blame that on Nolan. I don't blame it on David Goyer. They were in a tough spot because they originally had a different story that they shot and filmed. They had to re-edit that movie after the untimely passing of Heath Ledger because there was a different type of ending. There was a different scenario that would have led to Heath Ledger's Joker being a big part of the next film. So I get it from a certain point that, yeah, it's not their fault, but the movie is not it. Some of the things, it is so fast paced. It doesn't stop, which is okay because that gets your adrenaline pumping. But there's a lot of moments that it doesn't allow it to breathe. There should be moments to breathe. There should be moments of when it's dire, the best scene in the movie is the hospital scene with Joker and Two-Face and Harvey Dent, because that is one of the few scenes in the movie that is just allowed to breathe. It's allowed to grow. It slowly builds up to what it becomes. And the rest of the movie just misses that so much. So yes, I agree. You got me on a rant for The Dark Knight. I agree. It is a overrated movie. Good movie, but definitely the most overrated of the Nolan trilogy. And 10,000 hours in Arkham Knight. Look, Arkham Knight was a great game. I probably had like 30 hours into it, so that's pretty freaking impressive. Yes, Batman Begins is the best of the trilogy. Like you said, it's the most Batman-esque. But The Dark Knight Rises is my favorite of the trilogy. It's so big and epic and audacious and somber and yet triumphant. I feel like, because about 5 years ago, I said the exact same thing. I really did. I kind of go back and forth between Batman Begins and Dark Knight Rises as my favorite. I had some issues with Dark Knight Rises that I just I struggle with while watching that movie. Uh, Miranda Tate, that whole thing, it was so predictable. It was so not played well by Marion Cotillard, or however you say her name. She wasn't right for that role. But I have some issues with it. Batman Begins, I love the suit. I love the aesthetic. I love how it feels smaller in scale, but the world around Batman is so small, it makes Batman feel larger than life when he's on screen. So I really like that about that movie. So I go back and forth with those because I think Katie Holmes was a bad choice for the love interest in Batman Begins. I don't think she did great in that film. But yeah, look, we could talk about I could talk about the Nolan trilogy for hours. I could, but I actually, man, it's been an hour already. Holy crap! I'm gonna have to get this show wrapped up. Unfortunately, like it's literally that time already, which is nuts to me. Because I believe it's been an hour. Triton, I want to thank you so much. Like you made this episode go forward. Hunter, Iggy, love you, man. You jump on, watch religiously, check us out. Thank you so much. If you haven't yet, anyone who's watching, listening, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe. Look, I know that some of these are a little over the top on my free top. So, that's okay. But our podcast, we try to stay true to the pop culture stuff on my podcast. Holy crap, where are you from, Triton? Past midnight? Man, it's only 7 p.m. here. I'm sure if I pulled up a map, I could figure out where you're from. But I'm too lazy. But again, thank you so much for watching, checking us out. I have stuff here to put up on screen. Remember, you can scan that QR code right on the screen right now. And that is going to take you to our link tree. That can find you all of our links to our social medias, to our email, if you want to ever email us and ask some questions, if you want to be a guest on the show. Scan that QR code, email us, find us, follow us, like us, all that jazz. It's awesome. And guys, look. Oh, here we go. Look. Enemy the SnyderVerse. That's Darkseid from the Teen Titans episode right there. Looks awesome. Looks absolutely awesome. And Triton is from England. That's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, animate the SnyderVerse, everybody. Animate the SnyderVerse. Thank you all so much for watching, for listening, for tuning in. With all that said, guys, I'll talk to all of you later.